Welcome to Section 2.2, Part 3. This is the 15th session of the CISSP exam prep series. This part continues risk management by moving from assessment into how you respond. In this session, we'll turn analysis into action. We'll answer several questions. How do the two assessment methods compare? Why must you prioritize before you respond? What are your options for responding to risk? What vocabulary describes an organization's appetite for risk? How do inherent, residual, and total risk relate? And where does cybersecurity insurance fit in? Why does this matter beyond the exam? Because identifying a risk is only useful if you decide what to do about it. Picture a streaming company that has mapped 100 risks but treats them all as equally urgent. Its team burns out chasing minor issues while the real threat sits unaddressed. Knowing how to rank risks and choose a response is what turns a long list into a focused plan that leadership can actually fund. How do the two assessment methods compare? Each has clear strengths and weaknesses. Quantitative analysis uses math and cost-benefit calculations, supports automation, handles large volumes of data, and stays largely objective. Qualitative analysis relies on estimation and opinion, resists automation, but captures the intangibles that numbers miss. Quantitative is more objective, while qualitative leans on judgment. Both deliver useful results, which is exactly why prudent practice uses them together. Think of one as the instrument panel and the other as the pilot's experience. You want both in the cockpit. Why must you prioritize before you respond? Because resources are always limited, and not every risk deserves the same attention. Prioritization ranks risks by significance, impact, and likelihood, so you can focus effort where it counts. It can be as simple as sorting annual loss expectancies from largest to smallest, or as involved as blending qualitative and quantitative elements. Either way, this ranking has to happen before you select any response. Picture a triage nurse in a busy emergency room. Nobody is ignored, but the most critical cases are treated first. Risk response works the same way. What are your options for responding to risk? There are several, and the exam expects all of them. Mitigation reduces risk by deploying safeguards, like encryption or firewalls. Assignment, also called transfer, shifts the loss to another party through insurance or outsourcing. Deterrence discourages attackers with cameras, warning banners, or the promise of prosecution. Avoidance eliminates the risk by choosing a different path entirely, such as siting a facility away from a flood zone. Acceptance means a cost-benefit analysis showed the safeguard cost more than the potential loss, so leadership signs off on living with it. And rejection, ignoring a risk and hoping it never happens, is never valid and may count as negligence in court. What vocabulary describes an organization's stomach for risk? A precise set of terms. Risk appetite is the total risk an organization is willing to accept across everything. Risk capacity is how much it is actually able to shoulder. An appetite can exceed capacity, which is dangerous. Risk tolerance is the amount accepted for a single asset-threat pairing. A risk target is the preferred level for that pairing, and a risk limit is the maximum above the target that will be tolerated before you must act. Picture a household budget. The appetite is what you are willing to spend, the capacity is what your income can bear, and the limit is the line you refuse to cross. How do inherent, residual, and total risk relate? Through what safeguards remove and what remains. Inherent risk is the natural risk in an environment before any management effort, your starting point. Once you deploy safeguards, whatever risk is left is residual risk, the portion leadership has chosen to accept rather than mitigate. Total risk is what you would face with no safeguards at all. Conceptually, the combination of threats, vulnerabilities, and asset value. The difference between total risk and residual risk is the controls gap, the amount your safeguards actually removed. So total risk minus the controls gap equals residual risk. What risk does a control introduce on its own? A new one called control risk. Every safeguard is itself a piece of technology, and no technology is perfect. A control that reduces one threat can open a fresh weakness in itself. Picture installing a smart lock that stops physical break-ins but adds a software flaw an attacker could exploit remotely. That is control risk. Because of it, risk assessment and response cannot be a one-time event. They must loop back on themselves, reassessing periodically as conditions and controls change. Security that is set and forgotten quietly decays. Where does cybersecurity insurance fit in? It is a form of risk assignment. Cybersecurity insurance transfers some of the financial fallout from breaches, ransomware, and attacks to an insurer. A typical policy can cover breach notification and investigation costs, financial losses from fraud or extortion, legal liabilities and regulatory fines, reputation and public relations expenses, and business interruption from downtime. Many also fund forensic services and incident response support. Picture a mid-sized retailer that survives a ransomware event because its policy absorbs the ransom investigation, the customer notifications, and the legal exposure. It does not prevent the incident, but it softens the financial blow. Just read the coverage limits carefully, because they vary widely. Why is cost-benefit analysis the bridge to choosing safeguards? Because every response ultimately competes for the same limited budget. Once risks are prioritized, you evaluate each candidate's safeguard against the specific asset threat pairing it addresses. You gather available options by surveying the market, consulting experts, and reviewing frameworks and regulations. Then you weigh each one's benefit against its cost relative to the risk it targets. Picture shopping for a security camera system. You are not just asking whether it works, but whether the protection it buys is worth the price for what you are guarding. That comparison is what carries you into the detailed calculations ahead. So let's bring it together. Quantitative and qualitative methods complement each other, so use both. Prioritize risks before responding, because resources are finite. Your responses are mitigation, assignment, deterrence, avoidance, and acceptance, while rejection is never acceptable. Appetite, capacity, tolerance, target, and limit describe how much risk you will bear. Inherent risk minus what controls remove leaves, residual risk, and controls carry their own risk. Cybersecurity insurance transfers financial impact, and cost-benefit analysis guides every safeguard choice. The MCQs covering all the topics and concepts from this session are available on rucloud.com. Practice the chapter-specific MCQs before moving on to the next session. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, post a comment below or email us. I will see you in the next session.